it looks like Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are going to be quite a story front and center, something that these guys didn't want, right? They absolutely didn't want this. There's news today that a key lawyer, Mr. Clark, Chris Clark, on Hunter Biden's team actually wrote a 32-page letter to the Justice Department. This is after the Washington Post actually reported back in October that federal agents believed that they had enough evidence to charge Biden's son with tax and gun-related crimes. And he said in this letter, quote, President Biden now unquestionably would be a fact witness for the defense in any criminal trial. He goes on, this of all cases justifies neither the spectacle of a sitting president testifying at a criminal trial nor the potential for a resulting constitutional crisis. Well, the fact that this is now out and that we now know that there was pressure being put on the Justice Department to make this all just go away and come up with that nifty little plea deal that finally the judge saw through. And by the way, whistleblowers came out and said, hey, what's going on here with the fact that this is coming out? This really does suggest a kind of cover-up, like full-blown cover-up. And they're threatening here the situation being that a sitting U.S. president would have to then take the stand. And we don't want that, right? That's not going to look good. You guys think it looks good to have a former U.S. president there having to sit and be in front of a jury? I mean, hey, like if you're going to do it for one, I think you're going to do it for the other, which is why I say this might be one big old legal festival coming up as we head into 2024. You might have Hunter Biden there on trial. You might have Joe Biden having to testify about his son. And increasingly, as you and I have seen, and I've brought forward so many of these documents, et cetera, this is not looking good in terms of the bank records, in terms of how much money was going back and forth, by the way, combined with the policy that then happened. I mean, for goodness sakes, right now, this sitting president is responsible for helping us get in a situation that, regardless of what you think of it, is very costly. It costs a lot of money to fund what's going on in Ukraine right now. And it's going to cost more if they have anything to say about it, something that Tucker Carlson has indeed brought up in the past. Like I said, took Mike Pence out over the whole thing. Here's Tucker.
But because Joe Biden and his many allies, from Chuck Schumer to Mitch McConnell to Paul Ryan and every single news anchor on all of television, all of them believe that Ukraine, its borders, its future, its infrastructure are all more important than the town that you live in. They sincerely think that, and it's obvious. Everyone in power thinks that, except for Donald Trump. Whatever else you say about him, Trump is the one guy with an actual shot at becoming president who dissents from Washington's long-standing pointless war agenda. And for that one fact, they're trying to take Trump out before you can vote for him. And that should upset you more than anything that's happened in American politics in your lifetime.
Right? I mean, I hear him. Regardless of whether you like Trump or you hate Trump, the fact that they're trying to take the opportunity away from the American voter to make that decision is kind of a problem. And then when you layer in the skepticism that I think so many of us have that's increasingly growing about, all this money that's being spent. And by the way, whatever happened back between 2013 and 2018 with the $11 million that NBC News, don't take my word for it, NBC News reported actually went to Mr. Hunter Biden and his various companies. He put together some 20 when his dad became the vice president of the United States. I mean, this is very peculiar stuff and stuff that we need to get to the bottom of. And so we now have a memo where Chris Clark, who's now no longer on Hunter Biden's legal team, is trying to say, hey, this doesn't look good. You're going to have a sitting president testifying here. And it's definitely not good when you look at the charges, right? I do believe the gun charges were kind of problematic in that the son is out buying a gun illegally. It's kind of feeding into a little too much in the way of political feelings, shall we say, on that front. But I'm still getting back to, what do we know about how this money was moved? What do we know about whether or not Joe Biden had a hand in it? And isn't it interesting that they were so anxious to get a plea deal, which now they don't have because one judge very smartly looked at this thing and said, hang on, does this mean that the government can no longer go after Hunter Biden for foreign lobbying, illegal foreign lobbying? And sure enough, according to the defense, Chris Clark, et cetera, that's what it meant. So now we're in a situation where, of course, you have a special counsel. I mean, except that in this case, the special counsel isn't actually allowed to be special counsel. There's also a very interesting story in the Washington Post. Here we go. What's this one? Before investigating Hunter Biden, prosecutor worked with brother Beau. And so there's a whole thing on how cozy everybody is. David Weiss, the special counsel now investigating Hunter Biden, has long targeted Delaware's powerful interests. His one-time experience with Beau Biden potentially complicates the probe. In other words, another conflict of interest, aside from the fact that the guy's working for the government. Why is David Weiss running this investigation? I mean, at first, my first reaction was, phew, at least they're actually looking into this. And then it hit me, wait a second. They're using the guy that was willing to come up with this ridiculous plea deal because everybody wants to keep Joe Biden off the stand. No, they want Donald Trump on the stand in, various venues, jurisdictions. I mean, I would just say this. Listen, guys, you've had a lot of time to go after Donald Trump. Why now? Why is everything supposed to happen just as the election's going down? Why wouldn't you do it after the election? Or why wouldn't you have done it months ago? Why is it timed so specifically to the time when you should be campaigning? Well, I think we know the answer. Meanwhile, there's a story out in the Washington Post that Hunter and his dad, they're pretty chummy during this whole criminal probe thing. They're so chummy that according to this piece, the very next day, right after he signed the now defunct, thank you, Judge Mary Ellen Noriega, now defunct plea deal, sure enough, Hunter Biden goes and hangs out at the White House for a couple of weeks with his family, and nobody knew he was there. Interestingly, none of the Biden staff knew he was there. Of course, everybody was a bit surprised, just a little bit surprised. I want you to hear the anchor here as he shows up at a state dinner for India. This was something else.
Hunter Biden mingling with the crowd as a guest of his father, and Jill Biden, the First Lady, as well there. He's greeting NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and others there. And this is the first on-camera public appearance we have seen of him since he was charged just...
The guy's like, yeah, he's kind of in trouble. And yet what does he do? He goes to the state dinner. He goes to the state dinner. You know what? I credit Representative James Comer because he's like a dog with a bone right now. And he keeps digging. He's come forward with all those Treasury documents, which I've shown you. 6 major U.S. banks reported 170 SARS, suspicious activity reports, all related to Hunter Biden and his various companies. Anyway, turns out there were lots of emails that we don't know about. Emails from Robert L. Peters. That would be the, the alias, the pseudonym that Mr. Biden, Joe Biden, actually went under when he was VP. So Robert L. Peters was one guy. Then there was J.R.B. Ware, W-A-R-E. That was one of the pseudonyms. And then you had Robin Ware. So a few different names that he's using. And this was in some official correspondence. And what's amazing here is that his aide, John Flynn, we know about this. He CC'd Hunter Biden on Joe Biden's daily schedule at least 10 different times between May 18th and June 15th, 2016. And then what I'm wondering is, did everybody get wise to it and say, wait a second, let's CC him on Robert L. Peters' schedule? And by the way, did Robert L. Peters weigh in on any of these things? One of the things that Comer wants to know, and this is from the National Archives, he's demanding these records, is whether or not there were, for example, drafts of the December 2015 speech to Ukraine's parliament. That would be rather interesting to know about, right? Given that Hunter was working for Burisma to the tune of $83,000 a month. Oh, plus his colleague, Devin Archer, who was also getting $83,000. And that's the least of it, right? By the way, let me just tell you, I've covered business for a long time. That's an insanely ridiculous amount of money for any board member to make. You might make $83,000 a year working for a board, but you'll make $83,000 a month. Like 83 a year would be high. This is wild. And so one has to assume this was in exchange for something, maybe. I'd like to see the emails. The National Archives needs to release these emails. So we did some tracking. We found out that the email, it was pci.gov. So what the heck is pci.gov? I encourage you guys to take a look at that. Go do a search, right? You do a search and pci.gov, like, it doesn't exist. And so we kept digging and eventually what we figured out was it was some kind of government email system. So there's a government email system with pci.gov, and that is what Joe Biden was using. And the question is, how much of it was he using to communicate with Hunter? And he may say, this is my personal stuff, but you know what? It's not. At least, he didn't have his own server. I mean, somebody had a server there. It's a government server of some sort, but at least it wasn't like the bleach bit, right? Hey everyone, Trish Regan here. If you enjoyed that clip, please do me the favor of subscribing to the channel. Just hit that little subscribe button right over there. Did I do that right? Not quite, but you know where it is. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that you get the alerts, and I'll see you back on the show.